Generating Racism. Yes, it's provocatively titled, and I do not want anybody to commit racism or generate any racism on my behalf. And of course, it would be my guideline to never commit acts of otherism, racism, sexism, and any other form of otherism as your ideal, your default position. So I want to say that up front because some people might hear my words in this tweet on this topic and misconstrue them, and I want to make it clear that I'm a humanist and I look out for everybody. I have no ill will, and I do not wish to generate racism, but the tweet is titled Generating Racism. Number 1, mind reading is impossible. Number 2, all humans are on a spectrum of otherism. Examples include racism and sexism. Via in-group preference. Question: how do you generate racism? Answer: introduce the immutable characteristic of race in judging the words and or actions of another. So mind reading is impossible, so you can't really look at somebody's actions and say, oh, this is racist, this is sexist, this is otherist, because there are many factors in there, in every decision, that may have nothing to do with identity at all. It could just be a matter of a low amount of merit. It could be another issue where the person just isn't in a job, for example, just isn't working out. But I've seen people, attribute it to racism, and that's perfectly acceptable because racism is still out there. It exists, and it's on every doorstep in America, somewhere. Every doorstep, every corner, every city, every state. Racism is still a blight on our humanity. This malevolent otherism sort of eating away at our moral core and our mortal core, because it's a negative energy, it's a negative force upon us. But you don't want to mind read and try to judge someone's intentions by, if they have a long history, if they've said something, if they made a statement, if there is evidence, innocent until proven guilty. You have to have some basis, because if you throw around racism with everybody, in every grievance, in every situation, in every wrong, try to right it by saying it's racist, it will lose. If it's not the situation, especially, it will lose credibility. And we don't want racism to lose credibility. Okay? It is a credible threat to humanity. So we need to make sure that we use it. We use the term when it's applicable, and we don't just call everybody out there a racist whenever they do something that happens to involve another race, for whatever reason, or even if it doesn't. So we all have bias. We all have bias. We have in-group preference. We prefer ourselves. We just have a natural connection. Now, there are some people that prefer some things out-group. They have their preferences. Everyone has their own way of perceiving the world and what they enjoy and what brings them love and happiness. They have that. But sometimes, you see it's not malevolent. What it is just natural otherism. You just prefer your own culture because you've grown up with it. It's what you're familiar with. If you held a gun to my head, I'd say, oh, well, what would you prefer? Something else that you've never experienced, or you've never lived in, or what you have. And it's difficult because sometimes some people might say, yeah, I'd like to try. I would like to be another person. And I say, well, if I haven't experienced that, their body, their life, their entire being, why would I want to give up what I have and what I know for an unknown? Naturally, I'd be sort of tentative and very careful and just sort of, I don't want to give up who I am. And to have 100% empathy, we all have a high amount of empathy if we're empathetic people, but if you have 100% empathy, the only way to get there is to be the person. The subject that you're talking about. That's the only way to get to 100. You can get into the 90s, but man, it's tough. We all have in-group preference. I am not saying everybody out there is an otherist. I am, but I'm not. I'm not saying you're racist or sexist. I'm saying that we all have in-group preference, and so there is going to be a bias, and it's going to be a deep bias. It's going to be like I said, if you're an A or B, you're going to go most likely with what you know and what is safe. So we value safety. But moving on, how do you generate racism? Well, and this is the problem, you introduce it into the conversation. You make the first reference to the race. The immutable characteristic can't be muted. Can't turn off your white, your black, whatever color you might be, whatever skin tone, whatever heritage. You can't turn off these genetic features. If you're male or female, you can't turn it off. Okay? If you're trans, I'm not going to go into trans as I don't fully understand the biology of transgender, and I'm not going to purport to. But, these are immutable characteristics that you are born with, that you are stuck with. And they can't really change, generally speaking. So why should you be cast as an other, an oppressor, or an oppressed, or anything? Why should we be looking at, any race specifically? Why would we not look at the individual? We are more than the sum of our race. We are individuals. We have our own agency, our own thoughts, our own responsibilities. We have the full range of intelligence, the full range of privilege, the full range of every element of life. And it doesn't matter who you are, you can succeed. But when you start to say, this isn't a meritocracy, this isn't capitalistic, this isn't the free market, this is a closed market that revolves around otherism, that revolves around evil, racism, then that's a bad market. That's a bad situation. We're not facing that. Not everywhere. Some places might have an issue with it. their culture doesn't accept another group or another race or another, whatever it might be, whatever their culture, their traditions are. I mean, I can't judge. I can't judge. But when you say that a statement is, you're doing it because of race, racist, just becomes racist. You're doing this because of race. That's racist. And look, we all have some of this in us. And a lot of us have good intentions. It's like Joanna Newsom said, you know, good intentions paving company. So ultimately, all people are created equal. And businesses don't look at race unless they're otherist or racist. They look at merit, performance, production, value. Some will tell you that meritocracy is dead, but they're the ones that are pushing for the sort of relatively anti-meritocratic economic systems as well. Like, you have to connect the dots. Usually, unless you're the Christchurch shooter, you actually have a cohesive political opinion that sort of falls into one of the sectors of the political compass. And so, look, it's not virtuous to point out race. You're doing this because you're this color. You're doing this because this is your ethnic background. And that accusation, nobody deserves to be treated like it's a race issue. But the thing is, with culture, especially in the West, in the United States and Canada, and in Europe, it's becoming harder and harder with intersectionality getting stronger and stronger. The social justice, the identity politics that drive a lot of our media and our culture right now. You know, it's hard because they think they're doing the right thing, and in some cases they are. I mean, we should be fighting for the rights of everybody, the civil rights and just the right to, you know, a peaceful, prosperous life with positive liberty galore and negative liberty to spare. So that's what we should be driving towards. But when you bring race into the conversation, you're not looking at the individual anymore. You're looking at the group. You're looking at the race. You're not, you know, it should be about the character. It should be about the flaws of the person, not their immutable characteristics. Things they can't change, that are inherent, that are good, that are part of who they are, that can't be changed by them. They can't improve, or they can't do anything to these immutable characteristics. They are simply there. They're part of us all, and we should not be judged by them.